So, welcome back to another episode of Coach's Corner, brought to you by your friends at SimTrain, the world's favorite AI coaching folks. Well, maybe if not your favorite, definitely the most passionate people about AI coaching. And I'm really excited. We got Ethan Adshade with us today. Ethan is Senior Director of Global Enablement at Ticketmaster. He spends all of his days coaching and helping people learn how to perform better and get better. So, Ethan, nice to join us. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. Yeah. I spend a lot of time building the systems around coaching and thinking about coaching. So, uh, excited for our
Cool.
conversation today.
Yeah, awesome. Let's kick it off right there, right? So as you think about coaching and building systems and what you're doing to get your people job ready, maybe just give us a little bit of background on your role at Ticketmaster, but then also, what does it mean to you when it comes up to coaching, and agents and how that works for you at Ticketmaster?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the B2C side, at Ticketmaster, what we would call fan support, we've got quality training, knowledge teams. Those all report up to me. And so I really, focus on agent enablement, right? And coaching is at the center of it. It's one of those things that has to become the center, right? I think coaching, quality, training, those things can kind of fall to the back burner. So it's really important for us in our philosophy to stretch and get to those coaching aspirations, where we are beyond just, hey, we have someone in the seat, we have the actual activity of coaching occurring, right? There's a percentage of our workforce time frame that's committed to coaching, but we're actually developing those coaches. We're actually
Yeah.
focusing on, hey, what is the impact of that coaching? And so that's at the forefront of really everything we're designing. And, I think, when someone asks me, they say, hey, Ethan, if you could have one thing right now that would improve the fan experience, what would it be? And my answer is always, if we had the world's best coaches in the world coaching our agents, that would be the solution. And so how do we get there? That's the big question. And that's kind of where a lot of our efforts in building systems that make that work.
Yeah. So anything that you feel as though that you've found a breakthrough on developing coaches, right, around your coaching system that you want to share with our audience today?
Yeah, I
Or
mean, I think,
that you're comfortable
yeah,
sharing. Don't give away all your secrets either, right?
no, of course not. No, I think the organizations, everyone struggles with this, right? There's a lot of components when it comes to coaching, right? Who owns it, right? Is it quality? Is
Right.
it training? Is it operations? How is that being communicated? What's the tools that the coaches have? What is, our environment in where coaching is deployed? Right. I think
Yep.
historically, most of our organizations are probably leading up coaching after their evaluations. So does coaching fit in quality? Or is it more of a supervisor operational aspect? And then are we aligned with what we're trying to do with coaching? Right? Is this compliance coaching? Is this just filling a seat and saying, hey, we've at least built in a system, we have a position here, or are we actually diving into this and saying, how are our coaches coaching? Right. And where are they getting that information? And so that's a difficult question to even address in some organizations, right? To really get to the point of, hey, we need investment in developing our coaches. And so that's why we really push our teams. And I would encourage other leaders, like you have to continually evolve past it. Right. If it's quality where your center is, then it can't just be about the scorecard, right? It can't just be about compliance. It has to keep going beyond and beyond that, or you'll get stuck, right? And so we really kind of our North Star is incredibly beyond just, hey, how do we develop agents, right? It's how do we optimize and develop our coaches so that one-on-one coaching that we have built in, that we have paid for, is truly impactful, and we see the ROI on that. And
Cool.
so it's a culture shift.
Yeah. How often do you do one-on-one coaching for an agent?
They're going to get it every week. That's how we've built
Weekly.
it in. Yeah.
Weekly. That's awesome. That is a heck of an investment. I love hearing that. Weekly coaching sessions, one-on-one, for each agent, right? So that's cool.
Yeah. And so that's where it's like, hey, we have this opportunity, right? We have 30 minutes to an hour with this. How are we capitalizing on it? right?
Yep.
And how do we oversight it, right? We work with BPOs. So how do we work with those BPOs to make sure that their coaches are following that same process? And
Yep.
so it's really a foundational buildup. You have to have some type of model, right? You can't just come in this and say, hey, it's coaching. You can develop your own model, but there's also a lot of existing models out there that you can duplicate, right? Frameworks such as Grow model, right? Where they're using that acronym to kind of progress and find points that they can develop on and find those gaps that they can work
Yep.
on. And then the other thing is creating systems that actually track that, right? What does the coaching environment actually look like? If these are all held in Excel files, like separated, not connected, you
Yep.
really have no control of that coaching environment and what's actually being deployed. So that's a huge investment as well. We want to make sure every coaching session is done on the right platform where we can monitor it, and then we want to track the impact of the coaching, right? And leverage those best practices from those exceptional coaches.
Yeah, I love it. I love it's kind of funny as you were talking. The reason we came up with the concept of Coach's Corner and doing this podcast is I went to a few events a couple years back as we were just getting rolling into the coaching side of training, right? And learning and continuous development and into the production environment. And everyone defines coaching differently. Every organization and company has a different definition for the word coaching inside of their four walls. And so
And that
it's yeah,
that philosophy has to be written out. Like you have to determine who owns this. Because it is a conversation, right? Does it fall under
yep,
training? Does it fall under quality? And then because training, quality, and operations all impact coaching, how do we
yep.
get those synchronized together so we're actually, achieving those outcomes? And that's a
Yeah.
big thing too. That's where you have to start. Like, what are the outcomes that we're wanting from these 1 hour sessions every single week? What is the
Yeah.
projected growth? And then how is that differentiated and how does that coaching change based off the tenor of the agent, right? Coaching should look different. And I think that's a balance point too, that we're still trying to work out the formula, especially when you bring in AI, right? When you talk
Hmm.
about AI coaching come in, one-to-one coaching is amazing. Once a week, I think is a phenomenal schedule. But when you have AI now overriding, like, what's the right amount of coaching on that? Right? If I'm a baseball player, I'm not getting coached after every single swing I take. So there has to be
Right.
this tuning of balance of what's the appropriate load, and it has to be differentiated across markets, across,
Yeah.
our different groups of agents.
Yeah. No, and look, we're highly biased with a lot of data, behind, the right amount of fundamental reinforcement on a daily basis between those one-on-one sessions, right? So you said, hey, we're doing
Exactly.
weekly one-on-ones, we're giving some guidance and direction. And then our clients are, they're spending probably about 5 minutes a day on a coaching exercise or a few exercises that build up to 5 minutes. So within 20 minutes a week, 20 to 30 minutes a week, agents are really able to upskill on a continuous basis and hone those skills to get huge productivity enhancements. So definitely an area we kind of geek out. Is there anything that you see in these one-on-one sessions that you're defining it and designing it and building the systems that you would say, yeah, this is where the greatest impact comes? When my coaches are doing their one-on-one sessions with their team and their agents that you can point
Yeah.
out.
There's a couple parameters that we follow. One is the continuous development, right? So we're
Yeah.
building upon that development over weeks, right? They're not one off. Hey, let's talk about this, and then the next, and so that's really where the grow model comes in. We start
Yep.
finding real trends based off the data, and then we work to impact on those. I would say the other. Um,
And Ethan, would you mind defining the grow model and how you're using it for our audience, for anyone who's not familiar with it?
Yeah. So G is like, where's the gap at, right?
Yeah.
R is what's the reality? Or I'm sorry, G is the goal. What's our goal? R is what's the reality? O is what are our opportunities? And then W is what are we going to do about it? And
Nice.
so when we use a coaching tool, AI tool that picks up those trends and suggests coaching opportunities based off real contacts to our
Nice.
coaches. But we require the coaches, again, we're trying to figure out this balance, AI coaching versus human coaching, right? And those
Yeah.
touch points, like you said. I think a big thing too on the one-to-one is figuring out, where is the actual need? And so when we have a system that brings in all of the agent's metadata, we know that the coaching's aligned to the lowest hanging fruit, right? We know that it's differentiated based off their tenor as well. And so if we have an agent who's super tardy, we're not going to talk about their empathy or questioning. In the coaching
Right.
session, we're going to address the major issue. And so yeah. And I think another big impact that this probably impacts a lot more organizations than they think. And it's agents understanding the actual context of the business. We have seen huge gaps in agents are sitting in a black box and a tire
Yeah.
rolls in and they fill it up with air and they roll it out. But they don't really know that when you take away the box, they're part of a Formula F1 crew, right? They're in the pit stop and they got a car racing
Yeah.
around the track. And that context adds so much benefit to them. So we've really worked on our coaches about helping agents understand the context of the business as well as the emotion of the fans about why an interaction went a certain way, right?
I
And
love it.
so that's been huge for us, because there's a lot of those intrinsic things, right? I think we've all seen 100% quality score phone call, but we've listened to it and said, "No, that wasn't it. That's not what we're trying to achieve. That's not the brand image we want."
Right.
And I think
Yep.
that points to like, hey, if we're just focused on compliance, like we miss a huge value add. And so that's really where I think coaches, they fill in that gap. They fill in that and they can give their, especially in the one-on-one. We want you to listen to a call and go beyond the scorecard. And we do what's called a grandma's test. So we tell every single coach when you listen to the interaction, the first thing before you look at the scorecard is ask yourself, would I want my grandma to be in this interaction? Right?
Yep.
Would my grandma be left feeling valued? Right? Would she leave with more understanding? Would she left feeling cared for, and not confused? Those are the things that we're trying to pick up on.
Yeah. No, look, the beginning of this show every week, or I say, hey, we're the most passionate coaches in the world. But Ethan, I think you're giving us a run for our money over here.
And
I
that's
love
good.
it.
I need more vendors. Like we're fighting like an old industry, right? So this
Yep.
all AI technology is coming in, and we're seeing, hey, there's a huge opportunity for this. And so I think we're just at this awesome time where the paradigm's shifting, and these
Yep.
often kind of cast away, hey, we just need to have them because they exist. We're an enterprise, right? We need to have QA. We need to have this.
Right.
I think that's changing, and we're saying, oh, whoa, these are actually like key value drivers for our business. And so I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I love your passion. Can you go back and look at like, as your career has evolved and as you've gone through your career, how do you feel as though maybe your approach to coaching has in itself evolved and grown over the course of your career, Ethan?
Yeah, I think I was reflecting on like coaches, and I've played sports my whole life, had some great,
Yep.
coaches in sports. But I think the most impactful coaching I ever had, I started my career as a teacher with Teach for America in the classroom. And my first year
Nice.
teaching, I had a coach. Her name was Melissa, worked at Teach for America, and she did this type of coaching. It was called live coaching, where I taught the whole class and I had an earpiece in. And she sat in the back of the room and would whisper through a walkie-talkie
Nice.
reminders and commands. And it changed my whole approach to teaching. It changed my philosophy to coaching. Like I saw like, whoa, this one-on-one real-time coaching, it's a game changer. And so I try to implement that, coaching as a leader. I'm developing my heads up, right, who are reporting to me, right, as well as designing systems for our agent level to improve, the customer experience in our
Yeah.
business. But that coaching exists in every single avenue, right? And so when you talk about what's the difference between a good coach and a great coach, it's the great coaches make the whole organization own that mindset, right? It's not just about the
Yep.
outcomes, growth mindset. Those are foundational pieces, but they really allow the whole organization to adopt this coaching system and mindset that's needed. So
Yeah.
uh, Yeah, I would say that was the most impactful coaching, and it's definitely stuff that I still apply today in the career. And that's the advantage of SimTrain, right? The advantage of SimTrain is saying like we can't scale as many coaches as we actually need, right? We don't have the
Right.
budget, right? If we did, we'd be an NFL team, but we don't have that. So now it's like we have to leverage AI, and that's why these tools are so valuable and so exciting. But it's overall, how do you build out that system? Right? How do I
Yeah.
truly build the system worse? My agent sim train experience is then tied into that one-in-one, right? And it's developed over months and months, and we see that ROI and we see those outcomes improve.
Yeah. So our NFL guest was Brian Gain, right? The
Yes, yes.
assistant GM for the Bills. So they had a good season. I think they were a little upset they didn't go too far, but talk
Yeah,
about
it
that
took my
fan experience.
Jaguars out. So
Yeah, that wasn't nice. That wasn't nice.
yeah,
Hey, Ethan, is there, if you think about it, you talked about Melissa, right?
yeah,
Is there also, and I'm going to call Melissa live coaching, that one single coach person that kind of shaped your career. Would you think that there's an experience for you as well that you can look back on and say, hey, this has really been this was big for me as maybe a learner or whether you were an agent or an athlete or something that in your lifetime that you said, you know what, that experience is like that's what kind of got me to this interview today and why I'm so passionate about coaching and developing people.
yeah. I mean, I would say there's a list of experiences as a
Oh.
coach, seeing the impact. I mean, I can talk about it right now. I can talk about promotion I just gave last week. And
Yep.
if I showed you the emails that was sent at the beginning of the year versus the insights that were delivered at the end of the year, you would say that's true development. So I think that like seeing the result of it is the biggest impact. And I would say probably going back to Melissa, like it's you know, coaching, I played team sports my whole life, right? So
Yep.
so coaches in a team sport is different than coaching in our agent system. That one-on-one coaching, that mentorship, it's just a little bit different. And so and I think it's just the dynamic of being in a team sport versus these one-on-one interactions. So I would say that live coaching for me was something that I saw the tangible impact in my students. And that's crazy. It is crazy to see, like, whoa, if I apply a strategy, this student's behavior and outcomes improve. And so that for me was, and that's why the coaching thing is so important because you have to have strategies. This isn't just motivation. This isn't hoorah good stuff. This is no, I'm going to apply tangible strategies and truly develop you. I'm going to apply
Yep.
research-based strategies and truly develop you. And so, yeah, I think that's what lit the spark where I said, whoa, this actually works. Right. And it doesn't just work with games, it works with like the hardest thing ever, which is developing people, developing
Yeah.
students. Right.
Love it. I love it. So you're talking to us about, defining coaching, owning it, putting systems together, quality ops supervisors, doing this weekly, right? Following systems like the grow model, right? Where you have a goal focused on reality, identify those opportunities, and go work at it, right? Put that work in.
Yep.
So this is great. Great advice. Is there any other like single piece of advice you would suggest to our audience or those senior leaders about when they're building high performing teams and they're setting up their coaching strategies outside of the ones you've already shared with us? And Ethan, they've been awesome so far.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is you have to develop a philosophy. We are in the era of AI, and this stuff is changing so fast, it's ridiculous. So your vendor options, what comes out tomorrow, it's going to change. And so you
Yeah.
really need to have that philosophy, that ethos to say, hey, this is what's going to control our decisions. Right. And what that looks like is it looks like writing out what an ideal coaching session looks like. Right. I can't, those frameworks are so important because also it gets everyone on the same page. Right. We can all align with our quality, with our training, with operations. We can get them on the same page. And so I would say, when you're building this out, start with your philosophy. Don't start with the technology or anything like that. Start with the philosophy, the outcomes you're looking, and then build that system backwards from it. And I would also just, it, it's such a hearts and mind thing, right? This coaching is a heart, it either works or it's not working. So
Yeah.
take the time, look at the data, and if it's not working, stop it, right? Bad coaching can be destructive. It can be
Yes.
extremely destructive. And so that's the big concerning thing too that kind of came up where it was like, hey, listen, if you're not addressing coaching, coaching can get really destructive, right? You can get a blind leading the blind situation, and that eventually you're going to have to address it. So that
We
would be
see it in
my.
youth sports all the time, right? Hey, don't coach fundamentals while your kid's in the batter's box. First off, you have no idea what you're talking about, and second,
Yeah,
the kid's trying to hit a ball that's coming at him, right? Give him a break. You had plenty
exactly.
of time to teach fundamentals before. That's bad
Yep.
coaching. Yeah,
Yep.
that's
And
awesome.
and
Hey,
and Yeah, and I would just say too, like take the punitive away from it. That has been a huge win for us. Is
mm,
really, and the way we did that is we removed and this is part of that operational model. We removed coaches from supervisors. So your person who's worried about your AHT and your FCR and CSAT score,
uh-huh, uh-huh.
not the same person who's developing your questioning and empathy skills so that those metrics do improve. And so we've taken that punitive aspect out of it by separating those roles.
I love it. Win the hearts and minds, right? And take the punitive parts out of it. So you're reinforcing those success metrics. Sometimes it's hard to talk about. I had a guy on CJ Nikowski talking about how hard he was on himself as a professional athlete and removing that barrier of that excessive critiquing of yourself. And sometimes it's hard even doing that, knowing that you're watching a contact center agent or an athlete, not having to overly critique them and take away punitive components.
And as a baseball player, like I'm not going to coach you by stating how poor your RBI is, right? Or your on
Some
base
do, yeah,
percentages. Exactly,
yeah,
exactly. So as a
yeah.
coach, I need to say, hey, let's look at your frame. Let's look at how your stance is, right? We got to actually get into the techniques. So
Love it.
absolutely.
I'm changing my batting stance this year based on YouTube and watching some folks op with a big open stance. So I'm making an adjustment. See if it works. First few weeks of the
Absolutely.
season, we'll see if it works. Hey, we talking a little bit about bad coaches, and I want to talk. I want to ask you a question about a guy who I think is a really great coach. But I think he's given the people of the world, including me and you, Ethan, because we are both mutual landlords. So this guy, Robert Kiyosaki, he gave the world advice in the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad
Yes.
about being a landlord. And I believe, and you can tell me if you agree with me or not, but I believe he's blatantly lied to every
Yes.
human being that picked up his book and said, owning real estate is a passive income game. And I think you and I both know that that couldn't be further from the truth, right? But I call it additional income, right? It's an active income. It's additional to my job and my work. Tell me what type of advice that you've got that from somebody like that where you're like, oh man, and it might be this guy, right? They're like, it's like I really thought I was getting some great coaching. I went down this path and I realized I had to teach myself a few new things along the way.
Yeah. I mean, I think. I've experienced that so many times, with mentors and saying, hey, it could be how you interact with vendors, how you interact with your BPO and things like that. But, going to the Airbnb thing, I could pull up my Airbnb and show you the ridiculous questions and the, Airbnb, I'm a caveat. I actually just talked to Airbnb. They're kind of my equal parts over there. They're looking at a quality tool. And I was so invested in it because I was like, I deal with your customer agents all the time when I'm
Yeah,
dealing with my guest, and I need y'all's customer experience to improve.
yeah.
It is. So I think, you know,
I know a guy that can help them, by the way, Ethan. I know a
yeah.
solution.
I know exactly. I'll offer it to you to him next time. But I think going back to what you're saying is that bad coaching, the bad advice exists everywhere. And bad advice for someone might be good advice for another. And so that's why that context is so important. We are trying to capture that, right? When we go to blind leading the blind, that
Hmm.
is where we have to capture it. Our agents have an extremely difficult job. It is very complex. The number of tools they're operating with, the emotion of our customers, and there's bad customers and good customers, right? There's bad actors that try to social engineer our agents. And so they have to be cognizant of that as well. And so when we are talking, and we have to be on top of, hey, what is good quality advice? What is good quality coaching? And we catch it all the time. We catch it, agents talking to one agent, hey, I dealt with this problem. What do you think the answer is? Oh, I always just say this. And it's like, no, no, we don't want you to say that. So, um, I, dude, spend 10 minutes on Instagram and you'll see a lot of bad coaching and a lot of bad advice, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
I think really it's so important for us as leaders to look at the context of our business, look at the message, the voice of our brand and what we're trying to say, and make sure at every single level we understand that, we reinforce that. That becomes part of our coaching model, right? Where we're reinforcing that brand voice, because in our business, it can get very slippery very fast when agents go off script.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Hey, so I got a little curveball for you, right? And it goes back to a
Yeah.
question we already talked about being mutual landlords. If you think about it and all the lessons you've learned in your Airbnb days and things that you as a property owner and renting it out, what advice do you have? What coaching guidance do you have for the next great group of investors coming in thinking, hey man, I want to have some additional income like Ethan and Dan, right? But what advice do you have them to go down that path? Anything that you can think of?
Yeah, I would start with always checking the market and the advantage, right? If you're going to buy a property, look, one of the greatest ways I go on Airbnb and I go talk to the neighbors, right? What other
Oh, yeah.
Airbnb properties are on there? What's your your occupancy rate? For us, we're always selling one aspect of the picture in Airbnb. So it might be a hot tub, it might be a unique patio, it might be, just an our artistic design in the unit. So we're really trying to sell that. And then it's really, really, really important to understand your total cost.
Hmm.
If you have to figure out your cleaning, you have to figure out your who's managing it. And yeah, I mean, these are any investor going in, you're going to do your due diligence, but I think for us, our approach is the market tested and good, right? If I go and I
Yep.
talk to some neighbors and their occupancy rate is above 50%, hey, that looks good for us. We're good. We're I've got units at like 98% occupancy, like insane. And
Right.
so I think that strategy has been really helpful for us. But yeah, I think the biggest thing for anyone getting into Airbnb or rentals, do not deceive yourself and think this is passive income. It is
Yeah.
so, so, so active.
It's active income, my friend. That's awesome. Great advice. I love it. The thing that I tell people is, look, you make your money on the way in to a piece of real estate on how you buy it. You don't have to optimize the way out. And one of the things you've alluded to today is if you have a stinker or one that you're not winning on and you have to take a little bit of loss, don't worry about it, right? Take that loss so
Yeah,
you can focus on your 98% or occupancy properties.
absolutely. And you know
Yeah.
that we were just talking about that earlier, before it was like I got a triplex and it's like, nope, we're closing it down. And that's the rich poor that's the one good thing is real estate is a good, you know, it's a good vehicle for me to invest my money, right? I'm not going to
Yep.
invest it in crypto anymore. Lost too much on that. Not going to, stock market is
Uh,
a gamble. I would rather go to the casino. So, um, yeah, it's a good place. And I think I have another buddy who's really into it, and his whole approach is colleges. He wants to get a place where college alumni, and it's all big football schools. So SEC
yep.
schools is his big focus, and he's killing it. So,
Oh yeah.
but he's designing his properties to know that Saturday during game day, there might be 100 people here because they're going to throw a party. And it's like,
Yeah.
cool. He's developed that whole system. So
I,
find the niche.
I,
Find the
I'll
niche.
throw some numbers at you. Alabama, middle of nowhere, you can rent a property for a weekend, right? That in a normal day, you might get 200 bucks for a night, but you can get $20,000 for a night, right? It's like,
Yep.
whoa, that's
Yep.
insane. As long as you're right next to the right school, right? With the right sort of
Absolutely.
property.
Absolutely.
They will
And
definitely spend their money on those parties, those 8 times a year in the fall. Hey, couple other pieces of advice for our audience, right? So you mentioned a bunch of AI and tools, and we talked a little bit about sim train and some AI coaching. When you think about the future, right? What
yeah.
really excites you, Ethan, about what's ahead? For in the world of coaching and developing people. What do you get excited about?
Yeah, I think we have to go. I'm excited about going back and revisiting this like antiquated system of enablement that we've had for so long,
Yep,
and these tools that we've deployed. So when I think about like what is AI going to do, I'm thinking like when are we going to get beyond the scorecard, right? The rubric, right? It makes sense why we deployed the rubric, right? It's scalable, right? Across. We can't have a one-on-one coach in every environment, and we need to do quality assurance, and so the rubric is important, but again, I go back to we've all seen a 100% scored interaction that said it didn't hit the mark, right? And
yep,
so I think that is what I'm excited about is we have to re-challenge that. And that's the thing with AI is you can go wrong with it too. If you think, hey, we're just going to slap AI and just do the thing that we've all been doing, but have AI do it at scale, I think you're approaching it the wrong way. I think AI gives us the ability to instead of saying, okay, hey, I have a scorecard and now these 30 questions on the scorecard are all going to be judged by AI. Like, that's great. You still have the scorecard, right? So I
right.
think we're going to evolve beyond that scorecard. I think agentic AI too, once we start applying that and it can start kind of honing in and seeing improvements, by analyzing that data at scale, I think that's the real solution. And I I am truly believing that this is going to be the big separator in companies, right? Your ability to adopt AI and utilize it effectively. It's the difference between, you know, having human calculators and having Excel, right? That's the big difference right there. And I think um, that's what I'm super excited about. There's also this explosion too of new companies coming into the space, which is so
Mm,
exciting, right? We
yep,
have legacy companies that everyone's heard of, right? Who's your quality
yep,
training? And we would say these one company names, right? That we all are
yep.
familiar with. Those companies are being, you know,
Pressured.
their market share is getting lost exponentially by these new, younger, more agile companies. And I'm really excited about that. So, a lot of the
Awesome.
partnerships that we've been investing in have been with smaller companies. And that kind of white glove treatment, that kind of partnership is super exciting.
Oh yeah, it's fun. It's fun delivering that level of white glove service too. But
Yeah.
as a differentiator, when you are a small company like a SimTrain, what I love is this concept beyond the scorecard. I love it. You were talking about where your passion comes, right? From this seeing the difference and knowing you're making a difference in an individual's life, but then also not focused just on the compliance scores and the metrics and the
Yep.
measures to move the needle, but what's driving the brand and what's driving the person that's driving the brand. Those are great lessons for everyone, Ethan. I really appreciate you sharing that. Go ahead.
Just in this age of AI, the need for human is going to be so much greater, right?
Yes.
So that's where I see the quality. Like, was this a human interaction? Right? We can solve these problems, right? But the
Yep.
advantage of now talking with the human is that it becomes that human interaction. And so I think that's where that shift in quality is going to. And that's where, I mean, all my writing right now, if you went on my LinkedIn, you'd see a 5-part series right now that's about like, hey, I really don't think the rubric is going to be the future anymore.
Yeah, and I would advise everyone, Ethan Adshade, get on his LinkedIn, follow some of his writing and the things he's talking about when it comes to coaching. You can tell how passionate he is. I think, equally as passionate as your friends at SimTrain.
Yeah.
So Ethan, how about for us as we end this, maybe a book that you would advise folks, to read, or maybe even a favorite movie or both.
Yeah, something I pick up a lot is the gap in the gain. I believe that's what it's
Cool.
called. Let me pull it up real quick. I'll give you a better.
Okay. I love it. It's a new one for me.
Yeah, I will. And this is specifically about coaching. Just pull this up. It is, yeah, The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy. The gap in the
Nice.
gain has been impactful for me, personally, professionally, but really applies itself to coaching. And it's really, talking about how we can use our perspective to look at our past events that we were in and focus on the gains that we've achieved other than the gaps that exist. And
Yeah.
really challenging ourselves to look at every component as a learning asset. And I think with AI, that's where we're going as a business, right? My philosophy is that every single interaction with our customers becomes an asset for my company. All right. And we can leverage that. And so this book does a great job about kind of dissecting that, kind of the mind shift behind that. And so I've actually given it to my team with their team as well, right? To
Awesome.
really focus. And I think that's just a good thing across the board, right? Teaching was so beneficial to me because I learned so many research-based instructional strategies. I also learned a lot of just different frameworks and mindsets, right? Having a growth mindset, right? We've encountered agents, right, who say, oh, I can't do this, right? And so we have to challenge that I can't and say, hey, I can develop into this person. And so it does become this very philosophical question. Coaching blends itself into that, right? And that's a good thing.
Hmm.
And so I would strongly recommend that book.
Love
And
it. Movie?
I don't know, a movie. Um, I don't know. I think if you've never seen Spinal Tap, you should watch Spinal Tap, um,
Nice.
just because it's a great movie.
Love it. Well, that's
Nothing
a
there
great
about
piece.
coaching.
No, hey, look, at the end of the day, a good movie is a good movie. Look,
A good
Ethan, this
movie.
has been so much fun. What I love about Coach's Corner is how much fun we can have just talking about coaching and developing people. And I'm going to go back and listen to this episode because I take copious notes while we're talking. But
Yeah.
man, you dropped a whole bunch of truth bombs on us that I think we can all learn from, especially if we're passionate about developing people. So I really appreciate your time today and sharing this with our audience, Ethan.
Dane, I appreciate you, right? Like you're a thought leader in this space, and it's awesome that you're creating this environment where we can, expound on this and figure out, hey, what is the future? Right? I truly think like the answers to these questions that AI has prompted us with are going to be solved in conversations like this with people like you who are creating this environment. So really appreciate it. Love what you're doing with SimTrain. We'll have to set up some more meetings after that, but yeah, man. Keep it up.
Love it. Thanks, Ethan. Thanks for joining us today. And everyone have a great day and happy coaching. See you.
See ya.